its concepts of different phases of history and time. We're all trapped in time, and we all seek to find liberation from it, yet none of us do. We're all subject to mortality, death, dissolution, and the fall of empires, fall of countries, relationships break up. I mean, I keep hearing of people committing suicide in this tragedy of COVID. It's as if the world is slowly committing suicide, especially if this is leaked from a biological warfare program, which I think is at least 50% possible. Suspend judgment, but I'm sure at least 50% possible that it was. In which case, this is a self-suicide by humanity. And so applying a medical approach, you see, the other thing that Meta-Mahayana says is that the medicines of each faith path, be it Druidry or Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or the different types of paganism, the runic paths and so on, they're all enumerated on my periodic table of the world's religions, okay? Including all the different kinds of Buddhism, all the different kinds of Jainism or Sikhism or Judaism, or Shintoism and so on. I think they're all yanas which are suitable for the time and the place where they arose. Taoism, etc., Shintoism in Japan. They all come from one ultimate common root, which is Sir Isaac Newton's position. The white light is the source of them all. And what I'm trying to do conceptually is to therefore subject them to mathematical analysis to find out their vibrational ray, so to speak, to identify their position on the periodic table of religions and philosophies, and to then try and calibrate where they, how proximate they are to that white light. I think that it's possible to reach enlightenment. You see, enlightenment is to me the achievement of the white light, which is what the Bardo Thodol and all the other great Buddhist scriptures talk about. Enlightenment is the clear light of the void, which you reach when pure consciousness cognizes pure consciousness and realizes its omniscient universality. That's what awakening is. When you stop being trapped in particularity and in matter, the forms of matter, the Maya, and you can appreciate its beauty and its dance and its magic, and yeah, we love Maya, but you don't get trapped in it. You don't get tortured like Catherine was on the wheel. You don't get on the Catherine wheel. Or you don't go on the cross like poor old Christ, stuck on the wheel that the cross symbolizes matter. Well, no, he managed to transcend that. So that's the symbol of the Enlightenment energy, which can go beyond, the cross and the Catherine wheel. So that's what the point of enlightenment is. That's what Buddha was trying to teach. Now, Kalachakra Tantra believes that it's a very intense form of that enlightenment energy. It's been well protected and shielded by Tibetan sages over the centuries, and then sort of handed on like a flame of gnosis to disciples in an unbroken lineage, I think. They believe that it was taught by Buddha himself. It was the innermost secret of all his teachings, so yes, Zen and yes, everything else, but the Kalachakra Tantra was the one he reserved when he was asked to speak by the king of Shambhala, which was a discuss. It was either a mythical kingdom existing in the etheric world, a sort of spiritual kingdom of God type place, or it was a place in ancient India which had preserved the golden age. There is a tradition in Hinduism. There was a village called Shambhala in which the golden age, Satyuga, still existed. It had never fallen into Kali Yuga. And that is something found in the Vedas, that reference to that village of Shambhala. And I think that's where the legend comes from. I think there's this idea that there is a place on earth where truth, justice, wisdom, beauty and love prevail. It's like the Garden of Eden stories in the Bible. This Shambhala is the original Garden of Eden, and and it has never been conquered. We never fell. Somebody's still there guarding the flame, and the king of Shambhala, who was guarding the flame in his day, he came to hear Buddha and meet him, and Buddha brought out all his bells and whistles and gave him a whole series of teachings on Kalachakra Tantra, because that was like, you deserve this, O king of the Garden of Eden, right? And the tradition is that the king of Shambhala brought with him a whole retinue, thousands of gods and goddesses were there, all kinds of dakinis, all kinds of angelic beings. They all heard the talks, and then he went back to Shambhala, and he taught all the other people of Shambhala, etheric beings, discuss. Which I know it sounds a bit odd, but it's no odder than the idea in the Quran that the jinn, which is their word for spiritual beings, also heard Muhammad speaking from time to time. And there's one surah in the Quran called the Jinn, where they come and actually listen and are converted to Islam. I mean, it's exactly the same idea. And I'm sure that probably Muhammad had that experience. I mean, a great teacher has to teach on all different levels. And if you believe or experience disembodied spirits, then I suspect they can benefit from Buddha's teaching or someone of that caliber, or Muhammad's surahs, because if they're coming from that high up a place of insight, then even a poor jinn, wandering homeless spirit being is going to want to listen in, surely. Anyway, so that's what they did to the Shambhala teachings. As a result, the whole of the kingdom of Shambhala became enlightened. It's such a lovely legend, this. I love it. And then they spread the teachings, in pockets around the world. Okay, so fast forward. Nagarjuna was enlightened by sort of spiritual teaching, I think divine. It was like a god level of type activity, like a download from the highest levels came, and Nagarjuna got enlightened because of this Shambhala teaching of the Kalachakra Tantra, and that gave him his incredible enlightenment breakthrough. Later, other teachers had the same. Padmasambhava, who took Tantra to Tibet, likewise was enlightened with this same teaching, along with his consort Yeshe Tsogyal. Now they brought these teachings to Tibet, and they were so sophisticated and so advanced. I mean, he was teaching people like how to meditate, but not just that, but how to use meditation as a vehicle to reach enlightenment. And not just like normal meditation, but also visualization and out-of-body experiences, and including esoteric sexuality. Him and Yeshe Tsogyal were consorts. And in Kalachakra Tantra, sexuality is an incredibly powerful energy that can create dual enlightenment or dyadic enlightenment, male-female, mutual enlightenment. And so all these teachings were part of it, and Padmasambhava was explaining this to the king, and that's why Tibet became essentially Buddhist. And then that carried on, it went forward, and you came also, there was another great teacher called Somanatha, who turned up in Tibet, who had synthesized not just all that, the chakra teachings of Tantra, but also advanced Shaivism from Kashmir. He was actually from Kashmir. And Somanatha, his name points to a Shaivite connection. And he brought in a sort of transcendental, like direct current to enlightenment. Like every now and then it needs topping up. It's like electricity. You have to put it on the card and top up the account. So Tibet got this influx of new tantric teachings through Somanatha, who also helped reform the Tibetan calendar, because the idea was to make time itself transparent to God energy, or divine enlightenment energy, white light energy. And each month, each form of the zodiac, which in Tibet is interesting and complicated. It's based on animal system. It's not the same as the Western horoscope system. so time became transparent to enlightenment. You can reach enlightenment whatever your animal on the horoscope is. I'm a monkey in Tibetan, Chinese, astrology, and so I can be an enlightened monkey. I have friends that are snakes or horses. They can be enlightened snakes or enlightened horses. That was the point of Somanatha, trying to enlighten people about the sacredness of time, and it works too in Western astrology. Although a lot of work needs to be done to recalibrate all these various astrological systems: Hindu, Chinese, Tibetan, Western, and make them all run properly. At the moment, they're all slightly off balance, and then the Mayan and others. I think there needs to be a sort of grand council of esoteric astrologers to come together and work out a sort of common universal astrological system, which includes them all, but isn't just limited to any one of them. I mean, that's kind of like a meta astrology, if you want, like a Meta-Mahayana tradition. It needs to be born, doesn't it? Okay, and then you can fast forward. Dol Popa was another great teacher who appeared, who he synthesized all this stuff, this tantric stuff, into a reflection on the nature of enlightenment itself. Because in some schools of Buddhism, enlightenment was put very negatively. It was a no-no. It was shunyata, the emptiness, the void. And the point is to reach that experience of the void. What Dol Popa realized is that there's two different types of emptiness experience. There's the emptiness when you stop, fussing about this or that, thing. You let Maya die away, and you give up everything. You plunge into the void, and you surrender your fears, worries, anxieties, hatreds, all the sort of negative emotions that we're full of. Chogyam Trungpa's book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, is brilliant. If you want a quick dose of emptiness, read that. It's a classic vintage study. But then, having got to that emptiness, you then go to the greater emptiness, which is the enlightenment place. I mean, you don't get there immediately. It takes a while, But you kind of graduate from the school of the lesser emptiness to the greater emptiness. And the greater emptiness is when pure spirit, comes into you, reforms you, reboots your system, so to speak. Now, this fits in with the phenomenological descriptions of all religions and the nature of God. You see, God is that divine emptiness, that current of the absolute, which then, through the Holy Spirit, comes into the reformed soul, the soul that has turned Godwards and says, I want to give up suffering, pain, ignorance, hatred, violence, etc. I want to be enlightened. So just that turning about like a giant telescope to the galactic centre, it enables then the rays to come in, which is the download of the higher emptiness, the true emptiness. Now that's what Dol Popa said, a genius who was inspired by the Kalachakra Tantra initiations, and he then launched, he called his teachings, or it was the Shen Tong tradition of emptiness as enlightenment. And it's still going, it became a very important feature in many of the ancient Tibetan schools in Nyingmapa. And the Kalachakra Tantra was part of this teaching. So, and what I've been doing in this day is working on the mathematics of all this. How many texts are there? How many stages of initiation in the Kalachakra Tantra initiation? I mean, it's still practiced by advanced lamas. The Dalai Lama himself does these initiations every decade. It's he only does one a decade. I mean, it's very long time cycle, because that's what you'd expect from Kalachakra. And there is a wonderful iconography associated with this. I'm going to show you at the end of this talk a picture of the actual Kalachakra Tantra. Kalachakra is a sort of yidam, as they call it. That is a visualizable deity, bodhisattvic image that you can visualize in deep meditation in order to purify your mind, in order to reach the states of enlightenment that he already has. That is, in Tibetan Buddhism, it's a form of practice where you invoke a certain deity, and by doing that it purifies your consciousness. It's exactly what Christians do when they invoke saints or they think of Jesus in deep prayer, and it's exactly the same. You visualize or focus spiritually on the teacher, wherever he is now, or she, and your energy is then purified because you associate yourself, so to speak. Muslims do it with Muhammad, with the other great saints and prophets of history. Jews do it with Moses, and in the Kabbalah it talks about how to do it. Isaac Luria and Abulafia and the other great Kabbalists, they have a whole teaching about how to hook your energy up with a departed saint or prophet from the past, Elijah, whatever. And there are many, many reports of Kabbalists who succeed in doing that. The sage then, downloads their wisdom into you, is the one way of putting it. So all traditions have been practicing this. Druidry practiced it as well, from what we can glimpse from the texts. If you look at, Pagan Celtic Britain by Anne Ross, or if you study my Encyclopedia of Druid Studies, you'll see they were doing the same, because, well, of course they would, wouldn't they? They're Celts from a huge terrain of northern and western Europe, and they're practicing essentially the universal wisdom path. The very word druid meant someone who could see this Dharma, and the Dharma is the teaching behind all this, which is the white light, which has not got a name. Druid is simply a label of someone that can see this white light. In other lands, it's called a Sufi or a Kabbalist or a Buddhist or whatever, or Buddha. Anyway, so in my work on maths, I've been having great fun today, because Kalachakra Tantra is very complex. It involves lots of mathematical stages, processes, rituals. I've discovered that there was a guy who was the Prime Minister of the great 5th Dalai Lama who really built the Potala Palace. And the Potala Palace is named after a hill in southern India, sacred to Shiva. What? Potala Palace? Dalai Lama's home? Named after Shiva Hill? Yes. This is through Somanatha's magic. This is the Kalachakra Tantra. No, here's Shiva, stick it in Lhasa, And I've also discovered Avalokiteshvara, who is the being Dalai Lama is in any one incarnation. He's actually Avalokiteshvara. His home is in the far south of India, right on the southern tip of India. That's where he actually lives. In his form as Avalokiteshvara, not Dalai Lama. He just lives up in the north. Normally in the Potala, but at the moment he's been ousted. He's in Dharamsala. But the real being, Avalokiteshvara, lives in the south of India. I have a friend who is who received a message from God to build this amazing tower as a interfaith symbolic centre. And he wants to build this somewhere in the world. He wants me to help him. So I've been meditating on this. I think it should be built at that place, on the very southern tip of India, where Avalokiteshvara lives. This should become a symbolic, interfaith peace sanctuary for all faiths. Be like a museum, conference centre, everything. To focus on this Meta-Mahayana tradition, which is, it's neither Hindu, nor Buddhist, nor Jain, nor Sikh, it's all of them. And that project is something we're discussing with the World Intellectual Forum at our monthly meetings on the 30th of the month. Okay, so... Well, so what? I've been a teacher long enough. That's what the kids always say when you explain something that really excites you. They say, "Well, so what? You know, I want to go and watch the football." Well, so what, my friends, is that we need to remember these teachings as a planet. We need to remember what we're really doing here. We're not here to just play football and swear and lie and get drunk and, you know, irritate each other and be cruel and violent to each other. We're not here to make wars and quarrels and arguments. We're here to bring enlightenment to each other, to ourselves, through all the existing vehicles of the many faiths, and recognize that they are all variations of the one eternal universal faith of ultimate truth. And that's what the Shambhala teachings were all about. Now, many great esotericists like Nicholas Roerich, Alice Bailey, Helena Blavatsky, Annie Besant, they all talked about the Shambhala teachings. They all knew about the Kalachakra Tantra. I've been to, you know, the headquarters of the Theosophical Society and spent time in the library there, Adyar. And they've, you know, I mean, it's interesting, K.H. or Kuthumi, who was one of the masters that set that thing up, and who advised Joel Kuhl, who then inspired Alice Bailey's writings, who was a Tibetan, Joel Kuhl, probably in Shigatse, which was very closely associated with the Panchen Lama, and the Panchen Lama was a fountainhead of Kalachakra teachings. And one of the mathematical, you know, questions I ask in my book is like, how many Panchen Lamas are there? I mean, it's a sort of a bit of a joke because there are contenders going around, and the Chinese are pushing one. You know, the only answer is that everyone becomes the Panchen Lama and reaches enlightenment. That's the only way out of this dilemma. Yeah, some people say Helena Blavatsky was the reincarnation of Tsongkhapa, for instance, which is a nice idea. You know, she was certainly somebody. And Tsongkhapa was the founder of the Gelugpa sect of Buddhists. He was very much inspired by Kalachakra Tantra. So, one of the questions asked in my mathematical book today is, imagine the great wheel of time, right? Imagine the Earth on its journey around the sun every year. That's doing like a prayer in its movement, a dance around the sun. So imagine we do a ritual every year, and Druids love to do this, you know, Beltane say, I think that's my favourite. So at Beltane we all come out, light fires, dance around and fall in love, and that's great, you know, that's the life force. We do it every year, it's like celebrating the sun. Okay, now let's imagine the whole solar system is going around the galaxy, the centre of the galaxy. Now this is a big journey, and I've discovered it takes 260 million years to make that journey. So if you have like a festival, so I'm suggesting, let's imagine we have a wonderful festival on this planet every 260 million years. Like a major planetary awakening type, open the Golden Gate, you know, type event. Every 260 million years. Well, that would be a planetary Kalachakra Tantric awakening, an initiation to die for. And then it wouldn't come round again for 260 million years. So the mathematical question I ask is, if we started, like, let's say we do one in my lifetime, you know, I'm trying to organise it, guys, please help. Let's say we can pull it off in our lifetime now, get world peace, open the Golden Gate, send all the warriors to retrain as peace activists, and retransform the economy of the world away from militarism to peaceism, so that it pays for schooling and health and education, and, you know, we can give everyone a grant to have a young family like they do in Holland, instead of penalising people for wanting, you know, love and families and things. So imagine we did that. Okay, Golden Gate, everyone's happy. Israel-Palestine signed a peace treaty, and we have a beautiful global Meta-Mahayana Kalachakra Tantra type ceremony. And then we don't have another one for 260 million years. We wait to come back to the same place in the galaxy. And then we have one every 260 million years. How many would we be able to have before the planet itself is consumed when the sun expands and becomes a red dwarf, which scientists assure us is going to happen eventually? I think we'd have about 10 of them. Okay, so that's the time scale that Kalachakra Tantra, Meta-Mahayana style, works on, right? So I'm suggesting, let's start planning this properly. Obviously, I hope humanity will evolve to a place of enlightenment where we put away the guns, the weapons, stop killing and torturing each other, men stop beating up women, women stop beating up men, verbally, as they often do, and we can all fall back in love with each other and animals and everyone, and we can really, maximise the potential enlightenment of this planet, which is huge. It's so beautiful. I've travelled all over it. It's, there are many, many poems still to be written. There are many concertos and songs and dances to be invented. There's many love affairs to be had. This is an amazing planet. Let's start enjoying it and using it properly. Let's take our medicine to a place of sophistication where it can deal with things like this COVID, and let's simply track down, which laboratory it was leaked from, which is my intuition that it was. Accidentally, I think. And this requires the truth forces of humanity to come out of hiding. I mean, Shambhala is there. It's hidden. It's veiled. It's cloaked. It needs to come out of its hiding place and insist on the truth force. It's interesting. After the initial king of Shambhala was taught Kalachakra Tantra, he was succeeded by 10 Dharma Rajas. This is in ancient Tibetan scripts. There's texts about this. And that means truth kings, or Dharma Rajas, is a king that can stand for and see the truth. We need them back. That's what I'm saying, for this planet's salvation. Okay, so that's what I want to say. That's kind of what I'm up to at the moment. And I hope that before Christmas, I hope to publish this book. And then you'll be able to read it. I can only give you a tiny little bit of what I've been studying. And I think personally, I think this is, I've always loved Tibetan wisdom lineages. And so this is part of my, fulfilling my duty of care to, what's happened to the Tibetans after the Chinese conquest was absolutely horrendous, obviously. They were killed, lots of monks were tortured, lots were despicably dealt with. Some managed to get out, and I've known, I've met quite a few of them. I've met the Dalai Lama, I've met the Taisa Tupa. I knew Lama Gangchen pretty well, who was another great visionary Tibetan Tantric teacher. I know Dobam Tulku in India, and I've known quite a few Tibetan Buddhists, and often they do have very sad, tragic stories. And I even read in a book called Tibet, O Tibet, by a great British Tibetan expert who went there and studied it. When the Chinese invaded Tibet, this is shocking, but it's true, they deliberately used what I call political cannibalism to cower the monks and the villagers that were supporting them. So when they were invading, they would come to a village where there was some sort of men hiding in the hills with a few old rusty guns trying to fight them. And they would assemble the town council, and they would ritually kill the mayor, who was like a Tibetan Buddhist. And then they would eat him. And like literally, serve up a feast. Completely in public, everyone knew what was going on. And they were making speeches about this is what they do to the enemies of Chairman Mao. And this happened in regions of Tibet quite a lot of times. The figures are shocking. Why do they do it? I mean, well, to terrorize the people into submission. I think it's just, shocking. And I think it's very odd, isn't it, that when you have very enlightened cultures, or enlightenment pockets, you often get very dark energies that seem to be attracted or sort of, pivot towards them. In one of Einstein's early papers, he wrote about a sort of diffusion of particles in confined spaces and how they search for equilibrium. He studied the mathematics of this. It was a puzzle to him and other physicists how, if you release a certain type of particle, would it mingle with all the others? And yes, eventually they'll reach an equilibrium. It seems to me that good and evil do something the same. If you have people practicing really good stuff, kind of evil wants to sort of get in on the act, so it will try and permeate and sort of it will, as it were, entangle itself into it. Mani talks about the same in the Gnostic traditions, the Cathars and the Manichaean texts that have come down, and some Zoroastrian. That's how good and evil originally got entangled. The world was created good particles, but evil somehow got in and tried to tangle in and get some of the action, and sort of tried to take over. Mani seemed to be a bit of a pessimist, although he knew a lot. He was a wise man. He felt the world had gone down. We weren't going to be able to save it, and the only thing was to escape into the sort of higher spheres. I don't share that pessimism, much as I respect Mani. I still think the world can be saved, and I think there's enough good particles of light to counter the negative. And notwithstanding horrors like political cannibalism, Maoism, and leaks of COVID, and God knows what, I still think there's enough good, wise, loving, intelligent, and enlightened people on the planet, not least in animal form, like my cat, to spread love, sufficient that we can solve our problems as a planet. I'm sure most Chinese people would be horrified if they knew that their soldiers were sent to do political cannibalism in the name of the great revolution of Mao Zedong. Shocking. And of course they're not taught this. They're not taught either what's going on with the Muslims, the Uyghurs. China needs a real wake-up call to realise that it's supposed to be one of the Enlightenment countries. I mean, it's the land of Confucius, who was one of the wisest sages who ever lived on this planet. It's the land of Lao Tzu, who was even wiser. And it's the land where Buddhism really, was welcomed, and it created Chan or Zen Buddhism. It created Shingon Buddhism. It created schools that were very much like the Kalachakra Tantra. In fact, Kalachakra Tantra teachings travelled through China onto Mongolia and Tibet, and they're still there, just waiting to be remanifest, as is the Shambhala kingdom itself. So China isn't sort of like the baddie. It's not. It's part of the good news that needs to remember it's the good news, just as Britain is, and Scotland, and every place on this planet is sacred. This is Shambhala kingdom. We just need to remember it. I have a banner outside the Peace Museum. Some of my visitors have seen, and used to be in the Great Hall at the Castle of the Muses in Scotland. It says Buddhists for Peace. Well, I've been involved with the Buddhists for Peace movement for many, many years, and still am, and to me it's part of